What's up, guys? Bill here. Welcome back to another watch list walkthrough. Lots of good stuff to talk about today. So let's jump right in. First thing we're going to do is start with SPY. And we're going to talk about using fibs in a little bit different way than I usually talk about in my videos. I don't know if I've discussed this before or not, but on certain days, and there's very few of them, where we have major things happening in pre-market, sometimes I'll draw a fib that encompasses that pre-market data into the intraday data. Or, when I say data, I mean the candlesticks, right? Price. And today was CPI day. And so we got some movements here. A nice pop up and then a fade down into close and a little bit more of a fade once we opened. So what I would do is, let's pretend the market hadn't opened. I would have done something like this, right? But right off the open, we fade some more. And then we start to base a tiny bit here once our opening range is set, these orange lines, and then we start to bounce back up. So now I'm extending my fib down to here. And as we know with the fibs, they can be obviously places to look for the retracement entries, which would be puts. And they could also be places to target, if you're going long. And I'll talk about, why I didn't go short today on SPY in the golden zone. I was already in calls. And that was just off the opening range breakout, guys. And then, so if you're still not familiar with opening range breakouts, basically I use the 15-minute. So we're on the 5 right now. Here's the first 3 candles. You draw the high and the low. And then once you get a close to either side, I prefer to use the 10 for that. Then you can enter. Now, today our 10-minute close was extended pretty far past the opening range high. So we close up here. I'm waiting for a retest. Sometimes you don't get the retests, and it's annoying, right? And SPY just trades away without you, and you have to find some. You either have to just accept that, or find some other way that you find acceptable to get an entry later. And I'll show you some examples of how to do that on a stock if you miss it, okay? And you're very confident in it. But luckily for us, on SPY today, they gave us this pullback to opening range high, and as you can see, we just grinded up all day. And in hindsight, it's easy to say, look, just a nice smooth trade. But this took a long time. So depending on the types of contracts you bought, you could have been getting pretty frustrated, growing impatient, right? Because once we got this retest at 720, it took 5 hours to go just a little over $2, $2.30, right? That's a long time to sit in a trade, to stare at 5-minute candles, if you're in 0 DTEs, that theta really starts to get you. So, I can't, preach enough. If you're struggling and you're still playing zeros, just try to buy 1 day at a time, 1 or 2 days at a time. And a lot of stuff, if you were trying to place SPY long today and you're getting chopped up or just felt like you couldn't make any money, a lot of that is probably the types of contracts you bought, because you had a, higher time frame contracts, more days to expiration. Then you could kind of have just done what? What do? We turn the EMAs on, right? And we kind of just, once we break out here, ride them all the way up, all the way to the end of the day. Now, the zeros, by the time we finally got up here and got this nice pump, they went, hundreds of, 300% in 10 minutes. So it's worth the payoff if you could wait enough. But it's just smoother and it's less stress. And if you're somebody who kind of finds yourself living and dying on the 5-minute chart with every little pop and dump and pop and dump and watching the theta eat away at your position, then try to buy a couple days and just see how smoother it feels, how a little bit less stressful. Okay. Now let's talk about some other things here on SPY today. And as we started to move up the chart into the fibs, a lot of times I would short here. It's my go-to setup, and it's got the highest win rate of any trade I take, intraday fibs, into the 618. And there was some room to scalp here. And look at how well it's respected on the 15. When we get there, the 618, it's wicks and closes right at it or back under over and over and over again. Now, I was already in calls here, so I'm just kind of like waiting for something to happen, right? They're not dumping it enough to shake me out. They're not pushing it enough for me to really get a good scale in. But a couple things started happening here, okay? The first is around, let's say, here-ish in the day, I noticed some big dark pool prints come in, okay? I use Trading Ticks for this. Here's SPY's dark pool page. This print right here, just shy of $1 billion, which is very good size for SPY, came in today, 462.60. So I marked it here. And when this happened, we were trading right around here, okay? So we were not able to get over this level, which at first might make you think, okay, they're trying to sell it. Hey, maybe they are, maybe they're not, okay? But we don't know. We don't know if that's a buy or a sell. We just have to watch price around it and kind of treat it like potential support and resistance, okay? At the same time, and there's no way to see this dark pool because it flashed up as a signature print up here, and it's not listed anywhere in this chart. But some small dark pool prints came in above price, a decent amount above price up here at 463.60, okay? So at this point, in conjunction with flow, if we look at market net flow, around that time of day, let's see, it was what, 9, yeah, right around here, 9:18, 9:15, 9:20. So right around here, we start to see that we're getting that separation I talk about. Calls start to, just imagine a straight trend line like you draw on a chart. Calls are starting to trend up and puts are starting to trend down. Now, yeah, they do kind of crest here a little bit, but then they fade off. Remember, these big spikes, those are to be ignored, right? This is probably some deep in the money hedging. So you imagine this isn't here. What do the puts keep doing? They just keep going down. So they basically do this, right? As calls just keep going and going and going and going. Okay, so now I have a couple different reasons to believe that this is bullish activity, right? You know, don't even get me started on SPY from a more macro perspective in what it's been doing lately. Bears can't sell it. They've been trying, right? There's been big institutional orders on Qs that we've busted through. On SPY, they keep trying to pile things in, but there's just more buyers. And then we have the seasonal flows. And, you know, if you guys follow Jem Carson, all the stuff he talks about, we're bullish into early January, right? That's kind of been my stance now for about 3 or 4 weeks. And I've been utilizing that in my day trading, okay? Today, we just got more evidence of that. So we know there's a huge new dark pool print here. We know there's some sells up here. What my thought process was, and looking at the flow, was they want to take some profit up here. All right. Here's our top of our CPI candle. You know, starting here to here in this zone is where I'm going to start to target for a move into the end of the day. Do I wish it would have happened faster than 5 hours? Of course. But we got there, right? So once I started to see this big dark pool print that originally we were kind of wicking over, we couldn't get up over, we had the 618 right there as well. Once we get over that and close for the first time on the 15, we hold it, okay? And the one sell attempt here is on a little bit less volume than the previous candles. This is when I'm really like, okay, we're going to get this move. It might take a while, and it did, but we're going to get it. And so where do we head? Right towards this sell. I took a bunch of profit here. My next target was the pre-market high, essentially, the top of that CPI candle, 464 roughly. Boom, hit it, and then kind of chopped around there the rest of the day. So this trade was just an example of using a confluence of factors and things that you trust to keep you in a trade. So my entry was my, you know, a tried and true strategy, opening range breakout. And then what kept me in during this long period of consolidation, I saw dark pool information coming in. I saw the flow, right? Things all kind of pointing in the same direction that maybe if I didn't use that data, if I wasn't aware of these things, maybe I get tired right here. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm sick of it. I'm going to take break even or take my 20% or whatever it is, something not great, and miss this whole move. All right. So there's SPY. It grinded up on the EMAs all day too, right? I think we talked about that. Let's talk about AMD, because AMD is a great example of relative strength. We talked about that recently in the walkthrough, how to spot it, right? And how to utilize it. Well, if you look at the daily, you can kind of tell that this is bed strong, right? Here's today's candle, obviously. But look at this big breakout day, consolidation day, followed by another breakout. Very similar to how it looked at the start of November. Big breakout day, consolidation day, continuation day. So this is a relative strength name, right? So what do you do with relative strength names? You keep them on your watch list, and yeah, they're going to pull back. Eventually, they're going to have off days, right? Even on AMD's nice run after the big breakout, it had some red days. It had some little doji candles, inside days, and things like that. But you got to keep them on watch, and, the breakouts are going to be more likely to hold on these names and to continue, right? So what can you do with AMD today? Opening range break. 10-minute close, retest. Boom. Now, let's say you couldn't get in on AMD. You missed the opening range breakout and you see it's ripping and you're like, oh man, this looks great. I don't have any major resistances on my chart. Maybe the 140 psych, but there's not another major pivot till 140, 125. I got to get in somehow. What do I do? All right. Let's bring the EMAs up. But this stock is too strong to use a higher time frame on. You can't even get a test of these EMAs this morning unless you keep going down to smaller time frames, smaller and smaller. And it might seem crazy, but if something's really strong and you have enough conviction to believe that this is the type of move that's going to continue, and it's not some like cheap illiquid stock that can just suddenly flip on a dime and completely nosedive on you, against you. It's not, like a biotech name or something, right? You can go down to the super low time frames, the 1 minute guys. Now, look at the respect. Here's once we broke out of the opening range, okay? So I'm talking about maybe you missed all this and it's just keep grinding up and you're like, how can I get in? It's not pulling back at all. Well, it's pulling back to these EMAs on the 1 minute. And you just get in any time it's near this EMA. And look at how much you could have just rode. I mean, let's say you got in, here it actually pulled back a little bit. 136.29, it pulls back 50 cents. That's a pretty decent pullback on a strong stock like AMD, right? You get in around this 9 EMA, 135.75. You catch a $4 move without breaking a sweat. Not a single close below, okay? Now, this is rare. Strength like this is rare, but this exact principle applies to any time frame. It just depends on the strength, right? And it depends how aggressive you want to be. You can watch it on the 3 minute instead, right? And try to find bounces off the 3 to get in on any time frame, really. And the more aggressive you want to be, you do that. You just play. You just be patient. Wait till that first test and touch of it, and then get in. And that's how you can, really catch some of these stronger stocks. Maybe they weren't on your radar at the start of the day, but because you're in a group or something and someone says, oh man, this stock is ripping, then pull it up, make sure you got the major pivots charted, and then start to look for your entry. Use those smaller time frames to get a pullback to the EMAs. So at the very least, it makes you feel like, hey, I have a visual target here. I'm not just slapping candles, okay, that feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere and I'm just hoping that I don't eat a knife, right? It can just really give you a little bit more assurance and pinpoint your entry a little bit more. All right, so let's talk about some of the trades I took today. I had like 3 winners, 1 loser. Okay, we already talked about SPY. Let's talk about Carvana. Carvana today, I played the inside day momentum strategy. So if you haven't seen my inside day masterclass video, go ahead and check that out. This one, you had to be quick, guys. And this is why I'm going to tell you about how I play these strategies, like what my execution is. Okay. I do not get super patient with my scales on setups like this, especially with names like Carvana, which are high beta, move quick, can get a little spready, and can be a little harder to get in and out of. Okay. So it's an inside day coming into today. Here's your candle, inside candle, right? So you mark the high and the low. And it was opening fairly close to the top of the range, opened here. And it just started pushing strong right off the open. And it was one of my top watches off the open. And so what do we do with these? As soon as we breach the high, you slap it. Okay. And it's good to have some targets. All right. So I had a target of pre-market high. And then my next real major pivot wasn't all up to here till 42.84. So I was looking at the 42 psych. I always use those psychs. If I'm in between levels, I'm looking at those whole numbers. Now on certain stocks, if they're cheaper, every 50 cents can be a scale spot, right? So, you know, if this had continued, I would have looked maybe to scale at 42.50 before I scaled here. But as you can see, it was a quick wick. Now, it might not seem like much, but that's a $1 move from our entry to where it topped out. And on Carvana weeklies, that's 40%. And it was in less than 5 minutes, right? So just a really quick win. And as soon as we hit pre-market high, I took a bunch off, like maybe half, 40%. All right. It kept going. But at this point, I'm setting a break-even stop. This is how I trade these names. Once I get my first scale, wherever I'm happy with it, maybe it's a percent, maybe it's a chart target. It just depends on a lot of factors. And also I'm watching SPY at the same time, right? I want to make sure the market's not going to rug pull on me. And I set that break even stop because this is what can happen. This big sell off like this. And if you treat this kind of setup, a momentum entry breakout on a wild trading name, the same way you might treat a position that you got in on a pullback to a big support level, you bought monthlies, right? You're kind of chilling. You can't treat this position like that. You can't sit for an hour and try to let the play work, right? This is maybe all you get. And if not, and it just keeps ripping, then keep scaling, right? You still have position left, but you got to protect against wick, nasty sell-off. Because on contracts like Carvana, these are at 0 down here, you know, like pretty close. Like, so you can't let that spiral out of control. And that is why I'm a little more aggressive, a lot more aggressive with my scaling on these types of plays. For every one that breaks out and never looks back, there's 10 that do this because this is a resistance, right? It's an inside day. That's why most of the time we're looking for a close pullback retest. This is just a different type of execution strategy when you're opening near one side of the range to catch the pop through. And maybe it comes back and holds and you stay in, right? But I set that break even stop. I caught a quick 40 and then it faded off and I kind of just stopped watching it the rest of the day. Okay. Another trade I took was BYND. These small caps and short interest stocks have been pretty hot lately, and BYND is no exception. Looking at the daily here, you can see the nice move it's made out of this range. And big stick yesterday, coming up to a very important spot, this 10 psych level, right? And in pre-market, we gapped up over it. So what I wanted to see was a retest and entry to trade it here. Now, it gives it right off the open, but I missed this. I was in Carvana, what we just looked at. I was playing that pop on Carvana. So I missed this wick down and could not catch that trade, but I just kept watching it. And later we came down here again and actually flushed below it, but then we started to reclaim it. And at this point, I noticed something on Carvana. I noticed how high these first couple candles were in volume. Okay. Look at the last couple days. That's your volume. That's all they got down here. It basically had its previous day's entire volume matched in the first like 30 minutes. Okay. So it came down here to this 10. And now you say, well, what does that mean? All this volume? We don't know if it means that it's about to just rip crazy, or if the trade is overcrowded and then it ends up getting sold off, or they're trying to shake people out because it's just a short squeeze name and therethere's people that are buried here and they're really getting nervous about a potential blast through 10 to 13, 15, $15 that really gets people in trouble. But it's worth it for me on this pull to support at 10, noticing how much volume is in this name today to take an entry. Okay. And we got a pretty nice move right back to the top of the opening range. And I was mostly out of the trade here. And then it sold all the way back down to the bottom of the range. And then it bounced pretty decent, but it took forever. Back off of it again. So this is a stock I'm going to be watching the rest of the week. Now that we've seen all this volume come in, and it's maybe a little more easier to see on the daily just how much came in today. Second highest to just this candle, those 2 days, highest and higher than its last earnings day. Things are starting to get interesting here with Carvana, right? And this 10 level is big, and there's lots of room up here. Has a gap to fill up in 13 to 14, has a big weekly FVG to fill here at 1545. So eyes on that with all that volume, guys. All right. And finally, let's talk about a trade I lost on today and why. Okay. I had been watching OXY for a potential swing. And as you can see here on OXY, we had been coming down to a pretty major support. Okay, so this 56 area, there's a lot of negative GEX here. We bounced some nice bounces off this, 3 times, right? And on the daily, once we got down here, we kind of got some volume increases on some compression candles, and it looked like potentially we're going to start to base. We put in an inside day on the 8th, and then on the 11th, on a nice volume uptick, we put in a bullish engulfing candle. But then we sold back down today to 56, and I was thinking, okay, maybe this is my chance to start a swing on it. And I was, I wanted to start a swing. I grabbed some 60Cs for the January monthlies. That was my goal, to get to 60. And I just rushed my entry here, and I'm going to tell you why, okay? So right off the open, boom, big sell candle on the 5, closing literally to the cent at 56. And I was on voice in my room, and people were like, hey, Bill, it's down to 56, because they knew my plan. And I said, okay, great. Well, I want to see a candle close back over 56. Okay, so I just was trying to be patient, and I waited 5 minutes, and I waited 5 more, and we just couldn't close back over. And that was going to be my plan. When it closes back over, I'll get in, and I want to see some buyers step up, right? But what happened? This candle. On volume, bullish engulfing candle. And yes, it closes right at 56. So not 56.01 or 56.05 back over, but right at it. And I let the volume make me a little jumpy. So I got in here because I thought, okay, with this kind of volume, I think buyers are coming and it's just going to start heading back up. And I don't want to miss my entry. But that was the mistake, right? And you can see it just couldn't get back over 56. It was a brick wall. Big sells. Grind back up, retest. Sell it right back off. And I ended up stopping out somewhere around here. I had a 25% stop set. That's my risk on these types of trades. I got in right near my entry, but it's not the worst entry ever. It's not a huge, dumb mistake or anything like that. But it just goes to show that a little bit of more patience, and I just don't take that 25% loss, right? I can see that it clearly can't recover it, and I go do something else, and I keep an eye on it, and maybe later it reclaims it, and I can get in, but it never did. So I took that loss, guys, all right? That's really it today. Just a pretty nice day. FOMC tomorrow. Hopefully that'll free things up a little bit and get some more range back in SPY. But if you have any questions about anything that you saw in this video today, just leave a comment or find me on Twitter, send me a message, and I'll help you out.